Hello, this is Lisa on Friday the 15th of December 2023, CEO of Sight for Wight, bringing you our last live talking news of 2023. Over the next 2 weeks we have pre-recorded new talking news to go out, but they are pre-recorded and not the news items. So wishing everybody a very, very Merry Christmas and a fabulous New Year. Lisa.
Here is this week's charity news for the 15th of December. All our activities have now stopped for the Christmas period and will resume week commencing January the 8th. Thank you to everyone who supports the activities, but if you would like new activities, please contact Susan on 522205 and she will look at idea.
The draw for our beautiful hand-sewn quilt was on Wednesday and won by our long-standing member, Margaret Evans. Margaret was delighted with her prize, so thank you to everyone who supported the raffle and raised vital funds for the charity.
On Wednesday, Millbrook House was full with everyone enjoying mulled wine and mince pies. We held the very large Christmas raffle, and everyone who was lucky enough to win a prize should have been notified by now. We are delighted to say we raised £1,700, which is an incredible amount, and we thank everyone who kindly donated prizes.
Our wonderful volunteers have once again been busy knitting chocolate orange covers, and we are thrilled to say we have sold out completely this year and already have large orders placed for next year.
Our wonderful Christmas tree was on display at Bryston Tree Festival last weekend. Our tree was decorated in blue and gold and depicted all the activities we provide. We received many complimentary comments about it, which is great, and hopefully we will be back next year.
Cowes Concert Band are playing in Newport Methodist Church on Monday night, the 18th of December, starting at 7:45 p.m. Admission is free, but a collection will be taken in aid of Sight for Wight and the band. Please go along and support this evening. Everyone is very welcome. And we wish you all a very happy Christmas and a peaceful New Year from all of us at Sight for Wight.
This is not a newspaper reading, but it's a seasonal greeting from Howard and Diane in Welsh. Nadolig llawen a blwyddyn newydd dda I chi gyd, oddi wrth Howard a Diane. And it means, obviously, a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all.
MP raises concerns that sexual assault victims are being treated unfairly. From the Island Echo, read by Joyce. The Isle of Wight's MP Bob Seeley is examining whether victims of sexual assault on the island are being supported properly. As it stands, the Isle of Wight does not have a dedicated sexual assault referral centre, SARC, somewhere victims can be seen and evidence gathered following a sexual assault. This means victims have to travel on a ferry to the mainland while preserving forensic evidence on their bodies until they can be seen. The issue is complex because it is said there are not enough attacks on the island to justify a sexual assault referral centre. These centres have to be highly sterilised and specialised to ensure that any DNA evidence of sexual assault is admissible in court. There are only 40 centres nationwide, which are supported by specially trained staff. Bob has said this week, victims of sexual assaults, almost always women, are having to travel on a ferry, whilst often in a distressed state, sometimes in public. It's made worse because victims are advised not to wash, eat or drink to preserve forensic evidence, making an extremely difficult experience even more distressing. It is clear that lower standards for evidence would not be acceptable. We would never get convictions in a court of law for island women. But I worry that some women may choose not to cooperate in bringing their attackers to justice because of the process that they need to go through and the added hurdles that islanders need to go through. And it is important that women who are victims of sexual assault are properly supported. The ferry firms have recently made provisions for victims to travel in a police vehicle rather than in public ferry lounges where possible, but that is at the discretion of the ship's captain and is not automatic practice. Bob has said he is investigating whether the prosecution rate for sexual assaults on the island are at a national average or lower. If they are on a par with other areas, and if it is clear that island women are not losing out, then we may need to make sure that the experience of going to the mainland is made as comfortable for sexual assault victims as it can be. However, if there is clear evidence that access to justice is being damaged because of the island's status as an island, then we need to find a way to bring an SARC to the island. It's important for both victims' dignity and access to justice. Bob's work on this issue is ongoing, and he is currently talking to the NHS, ICB, police, and the Police Crime Commissioner on this issue.
Help Isle of Wight Garden Centre Busy Bee win prestigious national award from the Island Echo, read by Lee. Ryde-based Busy Bee is currently in second place for the Garden Trade News Greatest Garden Centre Team of the Year award. This is a countrywide competition hosted by the UK's largest gardening trade magazine, whose competition helps raise funds for the Green Fingers charity. The competition is voted for by customers who visit the participating garden centres. Currently, Busy Bee's Christmas World team has passed large chain garden centres and multi-award-winning garden centres who are also taking part. Altogether, 280 garden centres are competing nationwide. Being in second spot is therefore a major achievement for a local island-based family-run business. Voting ends on Thursday, the 21st of December at 1600 hours. A spokesman for Busy Bee has said, "We believe that we have a great opportunity to champion the island with our dedicated team's efforts on Christmas World and really show the whole country just how magical Christmas is on the island." People can vote for the Busy Bee on the Garden Trade News website at tgcmc.newsweaver.co.uk. That's tgcmc.newsweaver.co.uk.
Hello, this is an article from the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Sue. Hover Travel flies glasses for Sight for Wight. Sight for Wight, the Isle of Wight-based independent charity dedicated to providing information and support to visually impaired islanders, has used Hover Travel to fly used glasses to the mainland to be sorted. Lisa Holyhead, CEO at Sight for Wight, explains, "Every optician on the Isle of Wight has joined Sight for Wight's glasses recycling scheme with bins in their stores to drop off pre-loved glasses. The first batch of 17 full bags was sorted by staff at Liz Earle, and now students volunteering under the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, both on and off the island at various schools, are sorting the next set. Once all the glasses are sorted, we plan to sell the reading glasses, recycle the NHS prescription glasses overseas, and sell the designer frames, having popped the lenses out to be reused. The sheer volume of glasses collected since July when the scheme started is frightening. I am determined to ensure none end up in landfill. For more details about the project and the work of Sight for White, please contact Lisa on ceo@iwsb.org.uk.
This reading by Howard is from the Isle of Wight Radio and concerns a shake-up in decision-making at the Isle of Wight Council. The Isle of Wight Council has moved closer to changing the way its members consider issues and make decisions. Work has been going on to investigate a move from the current cabinet and leader model to a series of committees which could see more councillors from all political backgrounds playing a part in decision-making. In principle, recommendations will be put to the full council in the new year. A working group has considered the views of senior officers as well as possible replacement structures and looked at other local authorities which have made the change. Councillor Jeff Brodie suggested the switch at a meeting in July. He argued 8 councillors out of a possible 39 made the majority of decisions, calling it hardly democratic or stable. However, Councillor Jonathan Bacon, the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, raised concerns at Monday's Audit and Governance meeting, saying detail was inadequate and that would mean councillors would not have enough information to make a meaningful decision. The authority would operate under a council leader and deputy with 10 committees and 3 subcommittees covering the range of council services. It's proposed there would be 100 places for councillors across the new committees compared to 95 under the current system.
Bonchurch landslide update issued as Emergency Waterworks issued from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Joyce. Due to the ongoing situations in Bonchurch and Ventnor regarding the landslide and emergency, Southern Waterworks, Leeson Road and Newport Road remain closed until further notice. A spokesman for the Isle of Wight Council said, "The levels of impact and disruption these road closures are having on people's lives and movements, and are seeking to find solutions in a timely and safe manner. We are in constant dialogue with service providers to understand timescales in order to keep disruption to a minimum and seek to remove any road restrictions as soon as possible and when safe to do so. In order to facilitate traffic flow in Bonchurch, Ventnor and the surrounding areas, diversions are currently in place. Island Roads have provided a map with suggested routes. These traffic measures have been put in place to reflect the width of roads and the nature of the highways network in the area. The Council is continuing to work with Island Roads to understand the best way to manage traffic so roads can be used safely and disruptions kept to a minimum." The Council statement continued, "At this time, we also want to reassure residents that all emergency services continue to have access to these areas and there are no expected delays should a need for these services arise. Southern Vectis is currently working on a revised shuttle bus timetable, allowing for a diversion route through Chale. Exact timetables for this route will be available on the Southern Vectis website. We have also been working closely with schools in the area and Southern Vectis to ensure that all school children who use buses to get to school can continue to do so. The Isle of Wight Council would like to remind islanders to stay away from the landslide site and from the beach and foreshore below the landslide for their own safety. Footpaths and rights-of-way remain closed, and signage has been installed to reiterate this message. Please continue to visit these helpful websites to keep updated with the latest information on roads, public safety, and further support for residents. Isle of Wight Council website, Island Road's website for current roadworks, Island Road's Twitter feed for live updates, Southern Vectis website, Isle of Wight Council website, rights of way closures.
White Building Materials assists with life-saving fire service training from the Isle of Wight radio, read by Lee. White Building Materials, WBM, has again teamed up with the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service to assist in potentially life-saving training. The aggregates business provided an old truck which was used by specialist fire service teams to practice techniques to remove trapped casualties from vehicles. 8 firefighters from the Ryde and Newport stations carried out the training at WBM's HQ at St George's Down. It was the second such training exercise WBM has supported this year, as the company looks to build on strong links with the rescue service. In the summer, firefighters used a 32-metre-high WBM Ashford Tower in a training scenario involving a casualty needing to be brought down from height using rope rescue skills. Early next year, further exercises are planned, including another vehicle-type rescue and also using WBM Plus 39's unique environment to practice mud rescues. Newport Station Manager Mark Kaplan said, "Exercises like this are vital in developing and maintaining our skills and getting valuable experience. This kind of scenario gives you a level of realism and you can recreate on the drill yard or classroom. They help us keep people safe." Thank you to White Building Materials, who we worked closely with again to arrange the scenario and allowed us to use their site.
Hello, this is an article from the Island Echo, read by Sue. Baker handed life sentence for cold-blooded killing of Tommy Barton. Cameron Baker has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 21 years for the brutal murder of braiding man Tommy Barton. It was during the early hours of the 28th of May this year that 28-year-old Baker armed himself with a kettle and threw boiling hot water over 30-year-old Thomas Barton, before then plunging a large kitchen knife into his chest twice. The knife punctured Tommy's lung, but the fatal blow was a stab wound to the heart. Tommy, a father and well-known cricketer, staggered out into the street and collapsed. He lay dying in front of his elderly father, who had driven him to Park Road in Ryde that morning. Baker, formerly of Leeds Street in Sandown, was charged with murder, but claimed self-defence. However, the Crown Prosecution Service successfully argued the case, and after a 3-week trial, Baker was found guilty of murder by a jury last Thursday. Appearing at Winchester Crown Court for sentencing this morning, Baker, now sporting a shaven head, sat in court 1, wearing a white shirt and a tie, as the Honourable Mrs Justice Cockerell, DBE, summarised the case. Tommy's mother, Kate, read out her victim impact statement live to the court ahead of the sentence being passed. After hearing a number of moving statements, Justice Cockerell said, "I have heard and read the extremely moving victim impact statements from the family and friends. It is clear the person they knew and loved was a warm, loving and vibrant person. He was kind, generous, funny, loud, and the life and soul of all occasions. He loved sport and cooked a great roast, lightening up their lives. It is plain to me that for all of Tommy's family, their lives won't be the same again. It is a loss beyond words." Addressing Baker, now stood in the dock, Justice Cockerell said, "You said you acted in self-defence. The jury rejected your events and has concluded you were not acting in reasonably self-defence, but you intended to cause him serious harm. You decided to pick up the largest knife in the block and a kettle of boiling water. You decided to use them as weapons. You took off the kettle lid, armed yourself with the knife and paced about, psyching yourself up. Tommy launched himself out of the car. Within seconds you had deposited the kettle on Tommy and stabbed him a number of times, twice severely and at least once more. You killed Tommy Barton. There is only one sentence that the law allows me to pass, and that is mandatory life sentence. Justice Cockerell proceeded to hand down a life sentence to Cameron Wayne Baker, who will serve a minimum term of 21 years behind bars before he can be considered for parole. A short letter written by Baker addressed the judge was considered in sentencing. However, Justice Cockerell explained, "I do not accept you have shown remorse. You have showed some remorse, particularly to Tommy's daughter in a letter to me, but a great deal of the remorse seems to be directed at yourself. You have been sorry for yourself for the position you find yourself in." It's not the first time that Baker has been in front of the courts. In August 2021, he was handed an 18-month prison sentence for affray and possession of an offensive weapon when he was involved in brandishing a harpoon and a chainsaw. The court heard today that Baker has a shamefully long criminal record, with a habit of making impulsive, poor decisions and being confrontational when drunk. Cameron Baker will not be eligible for release until at least the 1st of June 2044, taking into account 194 days he has spent on remand. Detective Chief Inspector Andrea Douglas, Senior Investigating Officer for the case, has today said, "This tragic incident paints the very stark reality of the immeasurable pain and suffering caused by knives and weapons. Tommy Barton was a young man who was killed in a senseless and despicable act of violence. My thoughts remain with Tommy's family and all who knew him." This investigation involved a large number of police officers and staff who worked tirelessly alongside the prosecution team to seek justice for Tommy and his father. Cameron Baker will now spend a considerable length of time in prison as a result of his actions that night. Knives completely destroyed lives, and we urge the community to keep reporting information to us around knife crime and those who carry weapons.
This article read by Howard is from the Isle of Wight Radio and concerns potential budget proposals for the island. A new town crier, community orchard and an election fund could all be included in an Isle of Wight Town Council's budget next year, with a potential council tax hike. Discussing its 2024 budget on Monday, Ventnor Town Council said it might put up its precept by 16.6%. That would mean the average Band D taxpayer would pay £28.32 more a year, or 54 pence a week, taking the total cost up to £198.89. Last year, the Town Council put its precept up by 12%. The precept is collected from taxpayers at the same time as Isle of Wight Council's council tax, alongside funds for police and fire services. Currently, Ventnor residents pay the third highest amount across the island for their town council services, behind Sandown and Freshwater. The Ventnor Town Council is facing some challenges in its current budget after a £3,000 hike in insurance fees, an £8,500 overspend on beach safety, and a potential £5,100 overspend at its Wellbeing Cafe for temporary staff. The increase to its precept would generate £10,000 for electrical works needed at Ventnor Park, £1,000 towards the creation of a community orchard, and £4,000 contingency fund put aside for any unexpected infrastructure costs. At £3,000 election fund could be created to cover expenses such as printing ballot papers. A town council by-election was last held in September. The budget also includes an increase in wages for staff. The council will make its final budget decision in February, when the precept level for the year ahead will be set.
Isle of Wight once again shines at Beautiful South Tourism Awards. From the Island Echo, read by Joyce. Isle of Wight businesses were recognised for their excellence at the Tourism South East Beautiful South Awards in Brighton last night, Tuesday. The annual awards recognise top businesses across the region, and once again the island is at the forefront. Judged by an independent panel, the awards are seen as a great way to boost business. Amy Summers, Sustainable Travel, Trade and Exhibitions Manager at Visit Isle of Wight, was at the ceremony to pick up gold for the Isle of Wight Walking Festival alongside David Howarth from the Isle of Wight Ramblers Association. Amy says, "It's a huge honour to be a finalist in the Beautiful South Awards, but to go on and win the Gold Award for the Best Tourism Event or Festival of the Year in the South East is a fantastic achievement. It was great to have David Howarth from the Isle of Wight Ramblers alongside me to collect the award in recognition of his dedication to the event throughout the years and on behalf of all the volunteers that make the event what it is today." Organised by Visit Isle of Wight, the Isle of Wight Walking Festival was responsible for generating an estimated £500,000 of economic impact for the island in 2023 and will celebrate 25 years in 2024. The Royal Hotel in Ventnor was shortlisted in 2 categories at the Beautiful South Awards, winning silver for Restaurant of the Year and taking bronze as Large Hotel of the Year. Also bringing home an award was the Art Deco House in Shanklin, winning silver in the self-catering accommodation category. Meanwhile, Away Resorts, Whitecliff Bay Holiday Park at Bembridge, took home bronze in the Holiday Park of the Year category.
116 calls about neglected animals made on the island so far in 2023. From the Island Echo, read by Lee. Shocking new statistics released by the RSPCA have revealed that so far in 2023, a total of 116 neglect reports have been received here on the Isle of Wight. New figures from the Animal Welfare Charity show that up to the end of October, its dedicated emergency line had received 43,360 reports of neglect across the United Kingdom. The number of reports the charity had about neglect in October, 4,387, was also higher than the number in that month of 2022, which was 3,818. In 2021, 4,186, and 2020, 3,931, with incidents shooting up an eye-watering 14.9% compared to last year. The data follows previous statistics suggesting calls about abandoned animals are at a 3-year high, with the charity expecting to receive more than 21,400 calls about unwanted and dumped animals this year too. Dermot Murphy, RSPCA Inspectorate Commissioner, said, "Thousands of animals' lives are hanging in the balance this Christmas, with animal neglect reports a real cause for concern, including from the Isle of Wight. Across England and Wales, our emergency line is getting a call about a neglected animal every 288 seconds. Combine those levels of neglect with rising abandonments, the cost of living crisis and the cold weather this winter, and we fear this could be a very bleak time for animals. But there is hope. Our frontline officers work tirelessly to bring neglected animals to safety, and it's a kind-hearted public who power those rescue efforts. This winter, our rescue teams are set to be very busy trying to help and reach so many neglected animals, which is why we need animal lovers to join the Christmas rescue now more than ever, and donate to help us be there for neglected animals in their time of need."
Hello, this is an article from the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Sue. Popular islander Kerry Ike dies aged 48 following long illness. The daughter of writer and public figure David Icke has died at the age of 48 following a lengthy battle with an unspecified illness. Mr. Icke shared the news of islander Kerry's passing via his social media accounts, posting a picture of her smiling with her dog. Ryde-based David, a 71-year-old former professional footballer and TV presenter, shared the sad news alongside a statement he wrote on Twitter. He wrote, "My wonderful, beautiful daughter Kerry passed away today in a hospital on the Isle of Wight after a stoic battle against a long illness. She was just 48. She left this world surrounded by her family and her fantastic boyfriend Ede, who nursed her magnificently to the end. Kerry leaves 2 teenage children and a family who loved her so much." Kerry was considered a popular and generous member of the Isle of Wight community, who put her weight behind a myriad of good causes in recent years. One of her many poignant social media posts from earlier this year spoke to her optimistic philosophy. "Maybe the key to happiness is to find yourself funny. This is my afternoon thought while sitting in my garden and finding myself hilarious. Maybe self-love is the answer. Maybe be your own number 1 fan. Maybe it all starts with us." Meanwhile, Kerry's brother Gareth, who also posted a short public tribute to Kerry. "Today, my big sister Kerry passed away after a battle with illness, always headstrong and doing things her way. She kept this to herself for over a year. We were so close in our younger years, but unfortunately life, parenthood and geographical distance kept us from seeing each other as much as we should have in recent times. Me and my brother raced down today and managed to get there and hold her hand, along with all her immediate family at the end. I will miss her terribly, but I know this isn't forever, only for now. I am sure there will be kind messages beneath this post, so let me apologise in advance for my lack of acknowledgement. They are appreciated by all of us, but I need to check out for a while. I hope you understand. Till the next time, Wiz, with a kiss."
This reading from the Island Echo by Howard concerns complaints over Barton Manor. The former chairman of the Isle of Wight's campaign to protect rural England and husband of the island's High Sheriff is at the centre of an investigation into whether aircraft hangars were built on his private Barton Manor estate without permission. Alex Haig Thomas, who runs the Barton Manor estate with his wife Dawn, says he's unaware of any council investigation. But the Isle of Wight Council has said it has received planning enforcement complaints over what has been described as an airstrip and associated buildings for aircraft on the estate. It's said that council officers are currently investigating whether there had been a breach of planning regulations as alleged. The local authority has said that it's also looking into whether trees were cut down at the Whippingham estate to make way for the airstrip. Mr. Haig Thomas says any changes have been above board and fall within an agreed land management plan. Mr. Haig Thomas has said he would welcome an open discussion to address any concerns regarding the land management process and planning consent. Between 2016 and now, satellite images show a section of protected woodland near the coastline changing, 2 buildings being added to a greenfield site, and the emergence of a lighter, straight patch of land. Mr. Haig Thomas said 4 agricultural units have been removed and 2 small, low-profile dark green sheds were erected. He said, "We've always sought and gained planning consent before building works commenced." Because an enforcement case was launched by the Isle of Wight Council in October, the authorities said it would be inappropriate to comment further at this stage. Regarding the trees, Mr. Haig Thomas said the estate has a woodland management plan agreed with Historic England, the Council, Natural England and the Forestry Commission. He said, "The plan has been very successful so far. We took on a neglected woodland which was overcrowded and devoid of light and life 12 years ago. Since then, we've been committed to promoting conservation and biodiversity in and around our woods and parkland."
Hello, this is Madeline.
Hello everyone, this is Mike.
We're reading the second part of the Talking News. Fears of further landslips. Following a major landslip in Bonchurch earlier this week, Fort Victoria Country Park is now warning of significant land movement taking place in the area. The movement is on the permissive path which runs along the woods between the Sway viewpoint from the Wooden Owl to the beach sign and Fort Albert viewpoint at the bottom of Hurstview Steps. A lot of these trees near the edge are being held up by fresh air, said a spokesperson for the country park. Avoid this section of the woods altogether for the time being. The steps that connect the beach to the woods have gone completely, and there is a pool of wet clay halfway up the path from the beach. Don't let your dogs or children run up the steps, as the clay looks very unsafe. Back in November, the country park warned that after recent wet weather and slippages, there were some very steep drops that did not exist previously, urging members of the public to be careful and stay away from the edges when in the park.
Walkers warned to stay clear. Bembridge RNLI warned us to stay clear of dangerous cliffs and issued advice following the major landslip in Bonchurch. Cliffs are dangerous, said a spokesperson for Bembridge RNLI Water Safety Team. Sadly and inevitably, our cliffs are moving, as we have seen in the local and national news. In our local area, the cliffs between Yaverland and Whitecliff are subject to falls, especially at Redcliffe. The coastal fringe between Whitecliff and Forelands is dangerous because of the deep mud, as is the area around Nodes Point and Priory Bay. Stay clear of them. For any coastal emergency, dial 999 and ask for the Coast Guard. Advice included checking weather conditions, planning a safe route home, and avoiding pools of water wherever possible.
Family dream has been left in ruins. The whole lot has gone. It's mind-blowing. The heartbroken family behind a Bonchurch tea room told the county press after a large landslip left their business looking like a war zone. Samantha Buckley, co-owner of the Smugglers Haven Tea Gardens on Leeson Road, said she was stumped for words. The tea room is one of several properties affected. Samantha, who joined the business in May, alongside her sister and brother-in-law, rushed to the scene on Monday morning to find the tea room's toilet block and gardens were no longer there. She said she was shocked to discover they had fallen around 60 feet down a cliff. A car and a large shipping container holding personal belongings also plummeted down the sheer drop. Samantha's husband, Phil, told the county press, "I know this is a landslip area, but you had the gardens and then there was a wall. And then behind that wall there was a good 100-foot drop. The whole lot has gone. I would never have thought in a million years the whole lot would have gone that quickly up to where it has done in one shot." Samantha said her sister and brother-in-law also live in accommodation at the tea rooms. Fortunately, they were not there at the time of the landslide. The family opened the business on May Bank holiday weekend, and it had recently closed for winter. Samantha said they had big plans going forward and refurbishments had already started taking place. She said she does not know what will happen in the future, but to her the damage is irreparable. She said, "It will be down to the council, but we don't know. Just looking, we've lost the whole garden area. The walkways have gone. Unless you're good at abseiling, there's no access. It's heartbreaking. The most important thing is no one has got hurt. As for the other residents, I just hope if they've lost anything, I just pray it's only gardens." Ventnor Travel hit by Bonchurch slip.
Huge diversions remained in place at the time of going to print, following the Bonchurch landslip. Leeson Road between Shanklin and Ventnor was closed. Matters were made more complex by emergency sewer repair works on Newport Road, where it meets Ocean View Road, as that also had to be closed. Residents were facing huge diversions via Whitwell and Godshill, which led to calls for motorists to take extra care in the area. The Isle of Wight Council says the closure will be in place until it is safe to reopen Leeson Road. It led to shuttle buses being run by bus operators, Southern Vectus, and complicated journeys for school children. The land was continuing to show signs of movement in the area, and islanders are being warned not to go near the landslip or coastal areas below.
Bleak winter for pets. There were 116 reports of neglected animals on the Isle of Wight made to the RSPCA between January and September this year. The data has been released as part of the national charity's Join the Christmas Rescue campaign. It warns it could be a bleak winter season for pets and other animals. Nationally, calls about abandoned animals are at a 3-year high. One of the many animals rescued by the RSPCA is Pixie, who is currently living at the charity's animal shelter near Godshill. An RSPCA spokesperson said, "She is the most loving little cat who just wants companionship and her own family to cuddle up with. She loves sitting in your lap and getting all the attention." When she arrived, Pixie was in need of some medical treatment, which included amputating her ears due to having cancerous tips. Despite all this, Pixie has been loving throughout and is living a much happier and bright life. Pixie enjoys her cat naps and laying in her cosy beds, but also has a playful side.
3 hurt in serious road crash. 3 people were injured but escaped with minor injuries, according to police, in a serious crash on the main road between Newport and Yarmouth on Sunday, December the 3rd. Police were called at 3:01 p.m. to reports of a collision involving 2 vehicles on Yarmouth Road A3054. The collision involved a Fiat Punto and a Toyota Yaris, with both cars suffering serious front-end damage and the Fiat rolling onto its side. Yarmouth Road was closed at Vittlefields Cross while emergency teams cleared the road, and the road reopened at around 4:50 p.m.
Couples fight to stay in home. A couple who were ordered to leave their holiday home after using it as a permanent residence have submitted another bid to stay there, now on a temporary basis. The pair were found to have breached planning conditions when they began living in the converted stable block on Appleford Lane near Whitwell in 2018. They moved back to the island after selling their house in France. A planning condition imposed by the Isle of Wight Council means the building can only be used as a holiday home because of its isolated and unsustainable location. In September 2021, the council took action against the couple, telling them they had to leave the property. The decision was appealed to the government's planning inspectorate, but the body agreed with the council, saying there would be an unjustified loss of an island holiday unit if the couple were to stay. They were told they had to leave the converted barn by November of this year. Now the couple argue they are stuck between a rock and a hard place and need to stay in the converted barn until it is sold, so they can use the funds to buy another property. Permission is now being sought from the Isle of Wight Council to allow them to stay there for the next 3 years, or until the barn has been sold, whichever is sooner. Planning documents submitted on behalf of the couple say it would enable them to stay there, to mitigate a range of unique personal circumstances and give enough time for the dwelling to be sold. Plans say the initial temporary residence was not based on a purposeful desire to breach conditions. The documents say, to date, no interest has been found for the holiday home, so a new marketing strategy has been created. The property is now on the market with Fine and Country, along with 11.6 acres, for £800,000, although it is still restricted to being a holiday home.
Households hit in major power cut. Householders and businesses living in part of Wootton were without power on Sunday afternoon. Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks, that's SSEN, says 5 postcodes were hit by the power cut, with the Kite Hill Nursing Home among the businesses affected. A power cut, according to SSEN, was first reported at 12:24 p.m. SSEN apologised for the loss of supply and restored it within 3 hours.
Scammers using Isle of Wight numbers. We are being warned of some of the more prolific scams in the run-up to Christmas. In one, a computer-generated call states payments have been taken from a Visa or MasterCard account, with an instruction to press 1 to report fraud. This scam also takes the form of a payment from your Amazon account. This may panic us into responding, said a police spokesperson. All of these calls are scams. Do not respond. Others claim they are the bank or the council tax refund department. These organisations will never contact you in this way. The number they are calling from sometimes starts 01983, but scammers will buy any available UK numbers. Set up call blocking, which is free if you have a White Fibre, Sky or TalkTalk customer, or buy a call blocking phone. These are free via the National Scams Team for very vulnerable people.
A knife man fled crash. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary launched an appeal for witnesses and information following a collision in Oakfield at Ryde. At about 7:20 p.m. on Monday, December the 11th, police officers were called to report of a crash at the junction of Ryde High Street and Harding Road. A silver BMW 3 Series and a white Ford Fiesta were involved, and there were what police called minor injuries. 2 male occupants of the BMW fled the scene on foot after threatening a male occupant of the Fiesta with a knife, police said. The force wanted to speak to anyone with CCTV, doorbell or dashcam footage. Call 101 or make an online report via the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary website using reference 44230505888.
Leo's Junior Bake-Off bid. An 11-year-old boy from the Isle of Wight will appear on Channel 4's Junior Bake-Off in the new year. Leo, who lives with his mum, dad and 2 older brothers, said he is really excited for the programme to air. He is one of 16 talented junior bakers, aged 9 to 12, who battle it out in the iconic white tent. Filming for the show has already finished, and Leo has had to keep his involvement top secret, something he said he found really hard. In a question and answer with the show, he said taking part was like being on a big holiday, and he was encouraged to apply by his nanny. Although only 11, he has already been baking for 2 years, and his speciality is Victoria sponge. Inspired by his family, Leo likes to use flavours such as cinnamon, chocolate and peppermint. He said his strengths lie with cakes, bread and cinnamon rolls, which are particularly popular in his household. While taking part, he set out to impress super cool judge Liam Charles, and he said he got on well with presenter Harry Hill. Leo said his favourite music to bake to is Bob Marley, and he would have loved to have made something for the reggae singer. On the filming experience as a whole, Leo told the Q&A, "It was so much more fun than I thought it would be. I was nervous about meeting everyone, but I learnt that I could make friends easily." He said he can't wait to watch the show with his family. So you can find out how Leo fared when the first episode airs on January the 2nd at 5 o'clock on Channel 4.
A drug driver flipped car on its roof. A drug driver who caused serious injury to a woman and hurt 2 teenagers when he crashed his Jaguar onto its roof, after avoiding a head-on collision, learned his fate at court. Perry Powell of Station Road, Wootton, was sentenced after he admitted drug driving on the outskirts of Newport on March the 24th. Tailgating a woman's car in Wootton before he overtook her heading towards Newport, Powell crashed the car a matter of minutes later. The overtaken driver then came across the Jaguar on its roof on Staplers Road. A second motorist said he took evasive action to avoid a head-on collision with Powell, described as being all over the road at a speed estimated to be as high as 90 miles per hour, said Liz Miller, prosecuting. Isle of Wight Magistrates Court heard Powell lost control on a bend and overcorrected, clipping a tree and hitting a fence of railway sleepers before flipping the car onto its roof. Powell's 3 injured passengers were taken to St Mary's Hospital. A front seat passenger suffered multiple fractures, including her spine, while a teenager in the back of the car badly cut her leg. A second teenager suffered bruises. Powell, who failed a roadside drugs test for cannabis, was also taken to hospital. Another drugs test revealed the 29-year-old had 5 micrograms of cannabis derivative THC in his blood. The legal limit is 2. For Powell, Michael McGoldrick said, "He drove too quickly. There was an accident, people were injured, but thankfully all the passengers have fully recovered." Mr. Goldrick said his client has suffered trauma and flashbacks since. It will be a lesson to him. Hopefully he can wean himself off cannabis. Probation would serve as a reminder of the dangers he posed. When sentencing Powell, magistrates described the crash as a horrible incident with dreadful consequences in which someone could have died. Powell was handed a 12-week jail term, suspended for a year, with an order to complete 150 hours unpaid work and 25 rehabilitation sessions with £85 cost and a £154 surcharge.
School Lifeboat Challenge. Students from Isle of Wight schools are being invited to nominate a class or group from Key Stages 1 to 3 to build a mini lifeboat as part of an RNLI project. Designs will be tested in a float-off next year. The competition is all part of a celebration of 200 years of the organisation, which was founded in 1824. The Isle of Wight Lifeboat Board was formed on December the 15th, 1859. Its aim was to raise funds for the establishment of the island's first RNLI lifeboats at Brook and Brystone. The life-saving organisation is hoping its design challenge will teach valuable water safety lessons and introduce young people to its work. As well as the school's challenge, from January the 1st, amateur island photographers of all ages can submit digital images on the theme of island seas, splendour and safety. The best will go on display and the winning photographers will be invited on a tour of the lifeboat station. Both competitions will close on July the 31st. Celebratory events are also planned for 2024, including an open day at the Inshore Lifeboat Centre in East Cowes. There will be a service of commemoration at Brook Church, near the site of the island's first lifeboat station.
A woman attacked in front of her baby. A man who punched his ex-partner in a prolonged physical attack caused her to fall on her 3-month-old baby has been sentenced. Harry Downer of Windmill Lane, Freshwater, was previously found guilty of an assault against a woman by beating and causing damage to her mobile phone on January the 9th, later admitting to an additional charge of failing to appear in court. He attended the Isle of Wight Magistrates' Court for sentencing on Friday, November the 24th. Lauren Stone, prosecuting, said the 23-year-old had been in a relationship with the woman for 3 years, which ended when their child was 3 months old. Ms. Stone said, on the day in question, an arrangement was made by the child's mother to go to Downer's house to collect their daughter. On her arrival, Downer was lighting up a cannabis joint while the child was in the living room, and she confronted him about it, the court was told. Ms. Stone said Downer reacted by putting the lit joint towards his ex-partner, just touching her eyelashes. He then attacked her, pushing her, then punching her face, causing her to fall to the floor and land on top of their daughter. The court heard that no injury was caused to the baby. The mother, with blood streaming down her face, tried to call police, but Downer continued to punch her, snatched her phone and smashed it to the floor, causing £230 worth of damage. In a police interview, Downer accepted he was smoking cannabis, but told officers the baby was his daughter and he could do whatever he wanted in front of her. Nick Muir, defending, said his client feels absolutely terrible, suggesting he has a lack of maturity. Mr. Muir said Downer failed to attend his trial on September the 20th because he overslept, and later handed himself in to police. Magistrates handed Downer an 18-month community order to include rehabilitation days, a learning programme and 150 hours of unpaid work. Downer was also made subject to a 3-year restraining order and must pay £230 compensation and a £114 surcharge.
Waste charge set for increase. The cost of the Isle of Wight Council's Green Garden Waste Collection Service could increase to more than £100 a year. Fees could be rising 6.25% from April to cover inflationary costs, with a decision due shortly. The optional service currently costs £96 a year for residents to have their garden waste picked up from their houses fortnightly. Bills could rise £6 to £102, so the council can cover operational costs and pay the service provider. When the scheme was first launched in 2017, it cost £60. That rose to £72 in 2022. After the hike last year, which saw prices increase by a third, more than 100 subscribers cancelled their subscriptions, although the council said it was not the only reason people had stopped the service. An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson said, "As with all services delivered, there are a range of costs that are subject to inflation, such as staff pay, fuel, vehicle maintenance, gate fees, etc. The council pays the service provider the cost of delivering the series and needs to ensure that in these difficult times, where inflation has been high, the service achieves sufficient income to cover the increasing delivery costs." On Monday, Councillor Ian Stevens, the Isle of Wight Council's Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Finance, will decide whether to increase the fees. The proposal typically goes through scrutiny and approval at the Council's Cabinet, but its members will not meet again until after Christmas. The Isle of Wight Council says it needs to make the decision urgently so it can design marketing materials, update the booking system software, and prepare to open subscriptions in early January for the coming year's service. The decision also needs to be made before the council sets its budget in February, so those behind the finances can estimate how much income the authority will be making.
Future Services Warning. The island is more than capable of dealing with the challenge it faces in the delivery of children's services, says a senior Isle of Wight Council official, as a decade-long strategic partnership comes to an end. It follows warnings from Hampshire County Council officers as the authority cut ties with the Isle of Wight Council. The Isle of Wight Council is in the process of rebuilding its own department, but will continue to buy services from the mainland authority. Hampshire warnings include a possible rise in the number of children in care if transformation programmes are not kept up, and what might happen if island officers take their eye off the ball. Councillor Jonathan Bacon, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, says he has also absolute confidence in the new people joining the department and believes the council will have a very strong team which will work in the best interest of island children. The partnership, which improved services from inadequate to good over its lifetime, will end on January the 31st. Speaking at a meeting last week, the current Children's Services Director for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, Stuart Ashley, said officers had been working well with a smooth transition, but he said change comes with a risk, the biggest of which is with social care. He said, "We don't want people taking their eye off the ball. Because of the services the island will continue to buy from Hampshire, the front door will be fine, but the long-term casework will be the risk, where people forget the rules and don't follow due process." Deputy Director for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight, Steph Howe, said if the island loses pace on the transformation programmes of care replacements, which Hampshire has been undertaking for the past 8 years, it could pose a significant risk, leading to a sharp rise in the number of children in care and in costs to the council. Ms. Howe said, some partners may become anxious because Hampshire would not be there to support them, which would deal with an increase in referrals. There are also concerns about the recruitment and retention of staff and head teachers, as well as support for all aspects of the transformation of the SEND programme. Responding, Councillor Bacon said Hampshire's comments were helpful and were taken as advice ahead of the work to be carried out in the coming months. He said anxiety levels would depend on how the new teams runs with the baton they are being handed.
Spanish on the seafront. 2 Isle of Wight businesses have teamed up to open a new tapas restaurant on Ryde seafront. Paseo Tapas has moved into the former home of Craft Beer and Pizza on the Esplanade. It is run by the owners of Union Street Deli, Pickle and Dill, Nicola, Daniel and Bob Wright. The family have joined forces with Jason Killingback from cigar and whisky shop Sip and Smoke in Victoria Arcade. Nicola told the County Press, "We used to do tapas evenings at the deli, but we have a tiny kitchen and we could only use a domestic oven. When Jason went into Craft and heard it was for sale, we looked at this amazing kitchen and we thought it was a great position on the Esplanade." Paseo opened its doors with a launch event on December the 2nd. Bringing a taste of Spain to the island, the restaurant offers an a la carte menu of traditional Spanish tapas and small plates in the main restaurant. There is also a separate bar menu for those wanting to pop in for a drink and a bite to eat. Having teamed up with Jason, the restaurant's bar is well stocked with fine whiskies, wines, spirits and cocktails. Paseo is open Tuesday to Saturday from 5 p.m.
Charity hit by burglary. An island charity has been left counting the cost after its community centre was damaged in a burglary. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary received a report that the New Church Recreation Ground Pavilion on Watery Lane was broken into. Police believe it happened between 2:30 p.m. on Wednesday, December the 6th, and 11:45 a.m. on Thursday, December the 7th. A ride-on lawnmower was stolen from the community facility run by the New Church Parish Sport and Community Association charity. Damage was caused to buildings and the perimeter fences, leaving the organisation potentially unable to fully support the needs of the facility's users. A spokesperson for the charity told the County Press this is the second incident in as many months at the pavilion. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary confirmed the incident is currently under investigation. Can you help the police? If you have information to assist officers with their inquiries, call 101, quoting reference 442304997743.
Expert gives inside track on the world of fashion. Fashion and textile students at the Island Sixth Form in Newport took part in an online workshop with a renowned fashion illustrator. Petra Lunenburg is a lecturer at the Academy Vogue in Amsterdam. She is currently illustrating for the Dutch version of Elle magazine, as well as teaching life drawing in her own studio. Petra spoke to students about her education and early work experience as a graphic designer. Before moving into the world of fashion illustration, she spoke about the importance of developing relationships with clients and team working to ensure success, and also shared examples of her work and projects. Petra has worked with many successful designers and institutions such as Diana von Furstenberg, Alexander McQueen, Victor and Rolf, Elle magazine, G-Star, Dutch Vogue and Amsterdam Fashion Week. The sixth form students had a go at creating their own illustrations using pens, pencils, charcoal and ink. Fashion and textiles teacher Abby Wilkinson said, "Making connections with professional designers and artists enriches the education experience to a level that cannot be overestimated. This was truly a wonderful experience for the students."
Fallen tree terror. A pensioner from the island had a lucky escape, walking from her car shaken but uninjured, when a huge tree fell on it in blustery conditions on Saturday morning. The 73-year-old from Thorley had been driving from Freshwater to her home via East Afton when the 40-foot fir collapsed across the road and onto her Vauxhall Corsa. Through a relative, the West White woman said she suddenly heard a loud bang and her windscreen smashed, stopping her in her tracks on Middle Road in Freshwater, between the junctions of Wilmingham Lane and the Causeway. A man driving with his wife in the car directly in front of her stopped after he saw what happened in his rear-view mirror. He immediately went to her aid and opened her car door to see if she was injured. To the shocked pensioner, he explained a tree had just fallen on her car. The victim's relative said she was very shaken, but was able to get out the car. Police and the Isle of Wight ambulance service arrived a short time later. Paramedics were stood down once relatives arrived at the scene. She didn't sleep well, but is feeling better. She keeps going over the day in her head, though, the woman's relative added. Island Road said it attended the site after receiving a call at around 8 a.m. The massive obstacle was eventually cut and cleared from the road later that morning. There were diversions in place for a time.
Missing person located. A large-scale joint operation coordinated by the Island Police and HM Coast Guard successfully located a vulnerable person reported missing. The police called in assistance from the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency on Saturday morning, with the Coast Guard helicopter scrambled from Lyon Solent. They were joined by personnel from the Bembridge and Selsey RNLI lifeboats, Sandown and Shanklin Independent Lifeboat, and the Coast Guard rescue teams from Bembridge and Ventnor. Bembridge RNLI searched an area between Bonchurch and Dunno's Point, Luckham, at the weekend. In a choppy 4-6 breeze, a shoreline search by both Bembridge and the SSIL was conducted. They were eventually stood down by the Solent Coast Guard after they received confirmation from the Island Police the missing person had been located safely ashore that afternoon.
Mental Health Service shake-up. There will be no big bang change in the way mental health provision is delivered on the island when services merge with the mainland next year, health bosses have said. It comes as the New Hampshire and Isle of Wight Healthcare NHS Foundation prepares to launch in April. The new trust will take on the responsibility of the community, mental health and learning disability, that's CMHLD, services of 4 regional NHS bodies. It means the Isle of Wight NHS Trust will no longer run the CMHLD services on the island, but there have been reassurances they will be still delivered locally. NHS bosses hope the new Foundation Trust will make things easier, simpler and better for patients and staff who work across the organisation. The 4 bodies coming together include the IWNHS Trust, Southern Health NHS Foundation Trust, Solent NHS Trust and the Sussex Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. Speaking at the meeting last week, Dr. Leslie Stevens, the Isle of Wight NHS CMHLD Director, said the large-scale organisation would benefit the island by improving access to the services regardless of postcode. She said it would also reduce duplication across services, which would save the Trust money that would be reinvested. Dr. Stevens said very detailed work is going on to ensure we are safe on day one when the services come together. Our expectation is there won't be a big bang change, but as we work together differently, we will take the opportunities to improve our CMHLD services. Dr. Stevens said the island would also benefit from access to highly specialist services and training supervision and support for staff and the island cannot provide. In return, mainland partners have been visiting to learn more about how the mental health sector on the island works together. Dr. Stevens said the organisation was making a real commitment on trauma-informed care, ensuring staff are properly cared for, but also being sensitive to trauma in the way they care for people.
Bus operator backs performance group. A group that gives disabled and non-disabled people the opportunity to create, rehearse and perform together has received a cash boost from Southern Vectis. Valuing Individuals Valuing All, or Viva, Carnival Club has been handed £500 to support its work to make its performances accessible to all. We aim to overcome barriers and work together to make carnival and performance that everyone can be part of and be proud of, said Yetta Wilkins, Viva Chair. We know that this is not easy for some, especially for disabled people or for those with chronic health conditions. The group also holds samba drumming workshops throughout the year, as well as carnival costume, craft and performance workshops geared towards specific events. Marcus Ellams, joint chair of Viva Carnival Club, added, "We currently have a membership of around 25 to 30 people and are supported by volunteers from the island's largest community samba band, Raw Samba. As a self-funding group, from weekly membership fees, we turned to Southern Vectis Community Fund and were delighted to receive £500. This will go a long way to kitting out our members with new T-shirts. We will be wearing them to our rehearsals and all our performances. Having new uniform really bonds the group and creates a sense of teamwork. Southern Vector's General Manager, Richard Tildesley, said, "It is important we maintain strong relationships with local charities, clubs and organisations. As well as that, we feel our bus services can play an important role in social care."
Future of RC's focus for school group. At Priory School in Whippingham, young members of the Eco Council took part in activities concentrating on the challenges being faced by our seas and coral reefs. The students led an assembly and enjoyed swapping their uniforms for everyday clothes on a Mufti Day. The proceeds went to Isle of Wight-based marine conservation organisation Blue Seas Protection. School head David Lloyd said, "I'm very proud of the students' achievements. I believe they have prompted us all to consider how we might better protect our precious seas and fragile sea life. They have also developed the skills of leadership, teamwork, communication and resilience in putting together a unique week of study, discussion and reflection. Well done all Eco Councils."
Cemetery house bid rejected. Plans to build a house in the grounds of a cemetery have been refused. A 2-bed chalet bungalow was proposed for behind the wall of Newport Cemetery on Fairley Road. It would have sat between existing homes on the garden of the cemetery's lodge. Last week, Isle of Wight Council planning officers rejected the plans, saying the house would be cramped and contrived and the area inside the cemetery would be overdeveloped. Concerns have also been raised by the bereavement service about the impact construction would have on funerals. The site is located close to the cemetery's entrance. This is the second time the proposal has been refused, the first being in 2022, although officers recognised the latest scheme was for a smaller building. Officers said the property would be out of character and have a detrimental impact on the neighbouring heritage assets, the lodge, gateway and part of the cemetery's boundary wall, which are locally listed. In their report, officers said while some architectural details had been replicated in the proposed house, many had not, and it would appear as a modern addition at odds with the Victorian lodge. They said the lodge has already been negatively impacted by a house built next to it in the 1990s. Another building would only serve to worsen the situation, rather than preserve or improve it, officers said.
Cleric and bestseller writer. In 1797, a young man by the name of Lee Richmond came to the island to act as a curate for the churches at St Mary's Brading and St John the Baptist in Yaverland. Lee Richmond was born in Liverpool in 1772 and 25 years later found himself on the island. Following a year on the island as curate, he was fully ordained, and while serving in the area, he gathered many stories based on some of the parishioners whom he served. Later in his career, he found himself serving in Turvey, Bedfordshire, and it was during this period that he decided to write various short stories based on the parishioners he had served while on the island. These tales describe how some of those people had overcome various difficulties and hurdles that had befallen them on life, this being his way of spreading his Christian message. Stories such as Little Jane of Brading and her cottage, and Elizabeth Warbridge and Dairyman's daughter. Many of these were published in a book entitled Annals of the Poor, a book that even Lee Richmond would never have believed could have gained so much success. To date, it is still being sold over 250 years following this first publication, having sold over 4 million copies in 19 different countries. Around the island, you may still find reminders of Lee Richmond and his stories. Arreton has the Dairyman's Daughter pub, and searching the churchyard of the local church, you will find the grave of Elizabeth Warbridge, the Dairyman's daughter. Visiting Brading churchyard, behind the church you will find the grave of Little Jane. While walking along the footpath leading to the downs, you come across Little Jane's cottage. Also inside St Mary's of Brading, a plaque is inscribed to the memory of the Reverend Lee Richmond, a vicar who sold over 4 million books.
It's the pantomime of your dreams, Sleeping Beauty. Made to Measure Productions return to the Medina Theatre this Christmas with their brand new spectacular comedy pantomime, Sleeping Beauty. Island audiences have been amazed by Made to Measure's sparkling and spectacular shows, and this year's production is bigger, brighter, and even funnier than ever before. Sleeping Beauty boasts stunning scenery, colourful costumes, toe-tapping songs, incredible special effects, and laughter by the bucketful. You really won't want to miss this traditional yet innovative, hilarious family pantomime. It takes place from the 20th to the 30th of December, and tickets are £19 to £16 concessions. A family of 4, £62, and groups of 10 plus discount available. So book your tickets early by phoning 823884.
Shanklin Theatre, December the 23rd to February the 24th. Friday the 22nd and Friday the 29th of December, and the 1st of January 2024 are being entertained by the play Rapunzel. Thursday the 1st of February, Saturday the 3rd of February is Carmen on Thursday the 1st, and the 3rd of February Jason Fox. On Saturday the 10th of February at 7:30 p.m. we have A Night of Freddy's, which we think is Freddie Mercury, and they're entitled as the Bohemians, and the Jack-Up events present A Night of Thousand Freddys. Thursday the 15th of February and Sunday the 18th of February is The Phantom of the Opera, which sounds rather grand. So that's the Shanklin Theatre advertisements.
Now we have some letters to the editor. Our roads are worse than ever, from Chris Taggart in Shanklin. Back in 2013, when Island Roads was formed, we were advised that all roads would be upgraded in the first 7 years, called the Core Investment Period. This clearly has not happened, as there are many roads, particularly in towns, which have never been resurfaced, despite the fact they are deteriorating rapidly, particularly side roads in towns such as Orchard Road in Shanklin. The contract went on to require maintenance of these standards for 25 years, but this clearly has not happened either. If you travel along Victoria Avenue in Shanklin, there are many places where the road surface has broken up and potholes are developing. Given that there are many other examples across the island, when is Isle of Wight Council going to hold Island Roads to account for their failure to comply with the conditions of the PFI contract? We were told at the beginning that the PFI contract was the way forward, but the roads are worse than ever. We are now more than 10 years since the start of the contract, so excuses such as COVID surely cannot be used.
EV fire risk fears. This is from Paul Knocker of Bembridge. An extract from a recent letter which should be of special interest. I live in France and regularly visit the UK to see my family. I travel by car via the Channel Ferry. Recent reports about fires caused by electric cars and scooters have made me think about what might happen on a ferry with cars parked so close together it could be devastating. The ferry company in Spain have already taken some action to identify EVs at the port. They are closely monitoring any sudden temperature changes on the car decks and reviewing staff training. Fire blankets and sprinkler systems are not suitable for dealing with battery fires. Whitelink and Red Funnel might do well to consult Paul Christensen, Professor of Pure and Applied Electrochemistry at Newcastle University, a well-respected advisor on fire risk. He said, "A battery fire can be controlled, but it cannot be extinguished. All the places you find EVs in close proximity, car parks and ferries, should now be considered a safety risk. A battery flame is like a blowtorch that will ignite anything in its path. A lithium-ion battery contains a huge amount of energy in a very small space. A full battery cell contains 4.2 volts of charge. Even if empty, it is a 2.5 AV Nissan Leaf, has 192 cells in 24 modules. A Tesla S has 7,000 in 16 modules. Full or empty, the risk of this energy escaping in its uncontrolled fashion is known as thermal runaway, an intense fire and toxic vapour. A cloud is the result. It can happen when charging or spontaneously through contamination of a single cell during manufacture, or if the battery is damaged. Once the runaway has started, no battery management or circuit breaker can stop it. I understand that the Norwegian shipping company Havila Kystruten have now banned EVs from their ferries because of the potential fire risk. A further letter, Moreton closure unacceptable. This is from George Adams at Brading. I was interested to read Malcolm Thorpe's letter regarding dredging of the Eastern Yar and the RSPB. That was in the County Press on the 8th of December. I have lived at Moreton Common for nearly 24 years, and the flooding and road closures have never been so bad. For a 4-week period from the end of October, the road was officially open for 5 days. This is unacceptable. I find it impossible to believe that a charity holds sway over the condition of the river and therefore the flooding of homes and effects on people's livelihoods, the Environment Agency needs to get it sorted and ensure regular maintenance is conducted. Perhaps Bob Seeley could get on this case. I've yet to write to him, but it's coming. Richard Quigley should take note too. Whoever gets in next time will be demanding action.
Beware rogue traders knocking. From Sally Ash, Isle of Wight Against Scams Partnership. The current bad weather doesn't appear to have prevented rogue traders from targeting the island. In fact, trading standards are seeing increased reports for the time of year. Whether it's somebody offering to clean or tarmac your drive, landscape your garden, cut down a tree or fix a dodgy roof tile, the message is always the same: never engage with somebody on your doorstep offering to carry out work for you. These will never be genuine traders and may leave your home in a worse state than when they started. If you need work carried out on your property, then do the following. Use a recommendation from a friend or family. Contact somebody on the Isle of Wight Council Trader Approval Scheme. Get more than one quote and don't necessarily go for the cheapest. Always make sure you get the trader's full name and address, as you will need this information if anything goes wrong and you need to pursue them in court. Be wary of using schemes for companies that match you with a trader. You can post an advert on their site and the traders respond. These generally don't carry out any vetting procedure and won't do anything if an issue arises. Anyone skilled or not can respond to your request. These are not trader approval schemes. Use a no-cold calling sticker available from Trading Standards at isleofwight.gov.uk. For advice, call Citizens Advice on 0808 250 5050.
We have a busy Santa's festive message. This is from Peter Shreve of Carisbrook. On a recent Saturday, Santa was delighted and excited to be invited for a second time this year to give out gifts to children and listen to their Christmas thoughts of the Salvation Army. I learned the most wanted gifts were Lego and rainbow unicorns. The most unusual was a dentist play set. Good to see the Island NHS Dental Service has a much needed recruit in waiting. The best gift was seeing younger children appear at the grotto entrance. Suddenly stop and stare before breaking into a huge smile. As Santa was so busy, he would like to publicly thank all special guests, such as the Snow Queen and all those volunteers who spent hours preparing before and tidying up after the event. Santa will not forget to deliver your presents. To all the families I say, thank you for your patience in the chilly air. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
So it's goodbye from Madeline. We don't have time for any more this week, and have a very happy Christmas.
And a very happy Christmas to you all. God bless you.
The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
The ayes have it. Well, that's the cry that usually goes up to indicate a parliamentary vote has just been successfully carried. But now the phrase has been borrowed by a campaign launched by a powerful group of eye care charities and professional bodies. I'm in the Thames Pavilion at the House of Commons, where MPs, amongst others, are being lobbied to support the call for a national plan to cope with what's being seen as a serious crisis in eye care, leading in the worst cases to people unnecessarily losing sight. The evidence is stark. According to the latest data from NHS England, over 640,000 people are waiting for specialist eye treatment. Of these, more than 1 in 3 have been waiting more than 18 weeks, 20,000 of them for more than a year. So what are the consequences? What's to be done? And what are the chances of securing a national eye care plan, which has so far been resisted by government? Well, throughout this programme, I'm going to be talking to a wide range of eye care specialists. But first, the people who these figures affect most of all, the still waiting patients.
I have age-related macular degeneration. In my right eye, it's dry macula, for which there is no treatment. But in 2021, in October, having had a rapid deterioration in my left eyesight, and I was diagnosed with wet AMD, for which there is treatment, regular injections. Unfortunately, there have been several times when I have not had my injection in a timely manner, and in fact last summer I waited over 12 weeks instead of the 6-week appointment, and my sight had deteriorated at that point. My big worry is when I go to bed at night, am I still going to have reasonable sight when I wake up in the morning?
It was the optician that found my wet macular degeneration and referred me to the hospital. They saw me within a few days, but it was 3 weeks before I got my first injection. And in that 3 weeks, I had a massive deterioration in my sight in my left eye. My first 3 treatments, when I did start them, I did get them at 4 weekly intervals. Then they said they'd try me at 6 weeks, but couldn't fit me in for just over 9 weeks, actually. It deteriorated quite a lot by then again.
Andrew Batty, and before that we heard Pam Percival-Maxwell speaking to In Touch earlier this year. So let's see if we can find the root of these delays. If you have an eye problem, who do you go to? Well, there doesn't appear to be a tidy answer to this question. That's part of the problem. You might go first to your GP, who would hopefully refer you for an appointment with a specialist. If you've had an accident, you might end up in A&E, another potential route to referral. Or you might go directly to your high street optometrist for advice or perhaps to have your eyes tested. But optometrists tend to feel that they're undervalued and underused in the field of eye care, and that they would be able to play a bigger part in solving some of these problems of late diagnosis, delayed treatment, and in too many cases, lost vision. Josephine Evans is an independent prescribing optometrist based in South East London, and she's a member of the Association of Optometrists. First of all, Josephine, what greater role do you think optometrists could play in the early detection of eye disease?
There's huge advantages for optometrists in the role they play because we're located really in good accessible positions for patients. So we tend to be community-based in the high streets. And we've got over 4 years of clinical training to become qualified as an optometrist.
What kind of things? Give me examples of the things that you could do which you don't often get the opportunity to do.
So it depends on the area because commissioning happens in pockets across England. But for example, in some areas we have very well established and successful schemes such as a minor eye condition service. And that allows us to see patients as the first port of call. So they would come into practice and we would assess them for urgent or referral refinement conditions, and that would be covered by the commissioning in that area. However, the main issue is this isn't national. Some patients who live in different areas don't have access to these services and therefore have to go straight to the GP or into the hospital eye service, which delays their care, delays their diagnosis and then their treatment as well.
I mean, do you often feel that you're seeing people too late anyway, given that quite a lot of eye disease is preventable and the earlier it's treated, the better the chance of saving sight?
Yes, unfortunately so. So, for example, if we conduct a routine sight test and we pick up a condition, for example, glaucoma, which can be treatable and can be stopped in its progression if treated early and well, when we refer those patients, they then have to wait months sometimes to be seen in the hospital eye service for treatment to be commenced. Versus if we could start treatment earlier on at the time that we suspect the diagnosis in the community, we could preserve their sight much sooner.
I mean, why do you think this is happening? You know, it seems daft. You have a professional skill, and yet, as you say, it depends where you are in the country, the extent to which you can use it.
The main issue is that we don't have a national eye care strategy at the moment. So it is such a postcode lottery, and it's really unfortunate for patients because there are advantages and disadvantages just depending on where they live. So that's what really needs to change. We need a national community-based eye care services that can relieve some of the burden from the hospitals and provide eye care at a really accessible point of contact for patients because we're right on their doorsteps usually.
And I gather we're talking largely about England because this campaign is a plan for England. Some of this sort of thing works better in Scotland and Wales?
That's correct. So they have different ways of commissioning their eye care, and they both have national schemes. Wales have recently reviewed their eye care strategy and have provisions in place to allow lots of the care to move into the community. So it's England mainly, which we're still broken up into these different pockets across the country.
The Association of Optometrists say that a lot of people are going private because of NHS delays, you know, that it's a choice effectively between saving money or saving sight. What's your view and what's the evidence for this?
In a survey of 1,000 optometrists, the AOP found that 81% of them had patients who were forced to seek private treatment within the last 6 months, with the alternative being the risk of losing sight. And sometimes these patients are spending their life savings on care that they've already paid for via taxes. So it's so disheartening that patients are in a position of and forced to do this because they can't access NHS care like they should be able to.
Josephine Evans, thank you very much indeed. Meanwhile, with 8 million attendances a year, outpatient eye units in hospitals are the busiest in the country. And yet, the majority of them in England are seriously understaffed when it comes to senior consultants who are leaving faster than they can be replaced. Well, Professor Ben Burton is president of the Royal College of Ophthalmologists. I asked him how serious the situation of staffing with senior consultants actually was.
We estimate that in England alone we're short 260 consultant ophthalmologists, which if you think about it is about 35 hospitals with no eye department at all. So there's a huge gap in training. I am very pleased to see that the government is looking to address this with a workforce plan, which was an excellent step in the right direction. So far they haven't confirmed where the money's going to come from or how many training posts there's going to be, but you know they do need long-term thinking on how to solve this problem.
Why are so many consultants leaving?
Well, I think there's a mixture of things. There were some problems with the pension taxes which encouraged people to leave, which to some extent have been addressed, so that's good. But there's also a big problem in ophthalmology with the use of the independent sector. So although you might imagine paying private companies to help with waiting lists is a good idea, what's happening is that we're paying companies to do straightforward cataracts, but unfortunately they are mostly using NHS staff or NHS trained staff who are then working for 3 times their normal hourly rate, and so unsurprisingly are keen to go and work for these companies instead of working for the NHS. So we've now got this ridiculous situation of a huge oversupply in some areas of cataract surgery. So you can choose to have a cataract done by 5 different providers within a week of being referred, and at the same time in the same area you've got people on waiting lists with perhaps glaucoma or macular degeneration. Their choice is not to choose between 5 providers. Their choice is go blind on a 2-year waiting list or go privately. So I'm really passionate that we need somebody to get a grip of the problem of the way we're commissioning the independent sector and have a bigger plan for ophthalmology that is sustainable and involves things like rare conditions, research, training. So massive changes, massive challenges. And it's not just lack of money. The money's going to the wrong places at the moment.
Just to address another issue, which is other professionals who could help. I mean, there are over 17,000 qualified optometrists in England. Wouldn't the use of them alleviate waiting lists to quite a considerable extent?
Yeah, it definitely would and could. There's 2 big issues that have been stopping that. One is the work that the optometrists are commissioned to do and the way they are funded. And the other one is there's big problems with the IT communications and infrastructure. So one thing that would be really helpful would be if ophthalmologists could see the tests that the optometrists have done, and also the optometrists could see our photographs and our visual field tests and have a kind of seamless integration of our notes and records. That would save a lot of duplication and unnecessary referrals, which are clogging up the system.
And why can't they? Why can't you each see each other's information, data?
There's multiple IT systems that don't talk to each other. There's GDPR rules. There's, who's going to fund it. There's lack of standardization. So one person will have one sort of scanner that records images in a different format to another. It's a difficult problem, which is probably why it hasn't been solved.
But isn't it the case that this is less of a problem in Scotland and Wales?
Exactly, yes. So Wales is looking at introducing a system where they have one computer system that optometrists and consultants and hospitalised services are on, which seems eminently sensible. And Scotland have got a much better contracting arrangement with optometrists, which allows optometrists to do much more to, see patients again. One of the issues we have in the UK is that very often optometrists will see a patient, find an abnormality, and if they see them again, it's at their expense rather than being funded to check, do they really need to be referred up? So there's a lot of things where we're not quite sure whether they're going to need to be seen again. And an optometrist could easily do that if they were funded to do it, but at the moment they're not. So they end up in the hospital, which is about the most expensive way of checking whether somebody really needs to be seen or not.
And so, if there were two things you could change straight away, and there are probably hundreds, what would they be? What are the key things you think need to be done?
We need a complete change of direction on the commissioning of the independent sector, which is damaging the NHS ophthalmology service beyond belief. And then we also need a joined-up plan to expand the ophthalmology workforce, integrate optometrists and IT and agree on a solution, and use the independent sector where needed, but not where not needed.
Professor Ben Burton. Well, amongst the other organisations which are backing this campaign are the Macular Society, which provides support for people with a group of conditions which affect the largest number of older patients, and Fight for Sight, which is the biggest funder of research projects into eye conditions. With me are their two chief executives, Kathy Yelf of the Macular Society. And I'm wondering what it is that you're seeing which convinces you that we do have a crisis which requires a national plan.
Well, we know that more and more people are getting age-related macular degeneration because more of us are living into our late 80s and our 90s. Most macular disease isn't even treatable at the moment, but that which is treatable has to be given in a really timely way. You have to have your drug injected into your eye when you need it, and if you don't get it, you will lose sight that can never be retrieved. Daily, hourly almost, people who tell us that they can't get their injection treatment at the right time. And that's incredibly frightening for people. But we also know that we haven't to date seen any coherence as to how on earth is the NHS going to cope with more and more patients, and there may even be a new treatment for another form, so-called dry AMD, next year, and we can't see the plan for accommodating all these patients.
But national plans don't seem to be the flavour of the month, or indeed of the 3 years over which you've been campaigning. I mean, you're talking to a government which recently cancelled its cancer national plan. Why would a department which feels it doesn't need a plan for a disease which causes so many deaths agree to it for a group of diseases which are very distressing for those who experience them, but not usually fatal?
Yes, that's true, and it is very demoralising. But we're addressing all political parties. It is quite a powerful argument that I think we're putting forward, and we have made some progress. We have got, for example, a national clinical director for eye care in England now, which that was new. We have managed to persuade the government to put eye care under the remit of one minister instead of across 3 ministers. So we're beginning to get a little bit of traction on this. We're not giving up yet.
Let me bring in Keith Valentine of Fight for Sight. Keith, I'm asking you a similar question in a way about some of the disparities here. Part of your campaign's call is for a doubling of the annual budget to spend on research for eye disease. What can you say that's likely to convince them that this is where they should be spending their money?
Investment in eye research and investment in the eye health system is an investment in UK PLC, and in the case of this plan, it's an investment in England and England's economy and its productivity as much as it is an investment in the health side of people's treatment of eye disease. Because at the end of the day, we know that people that have untreated or untreatable eye disease are far more likely to be out of work and not to be economically productive. So my general point would be, and I think the point of the partnership, that these are common sense investments and they make a common sense plan. The issue here, and I think the complexities faced by the government and all four of the political parties, is how they might find a way to build a system that's capable of delivering efficiency and value for money, and at the same time achieving the health outcomes, the eye health outcomes, that we would all desire.
You made a very interesting point in your speech, which I have to be honest, I hadn't heard before. We talk a lot about the actual treatments, but you made the point that the link often isn't made when it comes to eyes between treatments and rehabilitation and how to live your life afterwards.
I mean, it's something that's particularly acute for me, my daughter being diagnosed with this eye disease that I have during the lockdown, and seeing what happened around her support. And she's somebody that has capital, she's got a family that's gone blind, and she knows the organisations, but no real ability of the consultant ophthalmologist to give her a tangible next step. It's particularly true that if you lose a leg, God forbid it should happen to anyone, and the consultant surgeon dealing with that would be able to give you a specific, definite in-system referral for rehabilitation to learn to walk again. And that doesn't as yet exist for people with sight loss. And I think everyone would agree with me that it should only be natural and efficient for the system to make sure that when people are told they're going to lose their sight, they have a ready and easy access through the consultant ophthalmologist towards the help that they're going to need to get on with life. And part of doing the work behind this plan is to start to propose that. It's particularly the case with eye health because it is complex and it occurs multiple different ways within the population.
And the numbers in the future are really quite staggering. People have got to wake up to this is a very, very significant public health issue now.
Cathy Yelf and Keith Valentine ending our report. We had hoped to be able to put the government's reaction to the Eyes Have It partnership's calls for a national eye care plan at this event, and 8 working days ago requested the Department of Health and Social Care for an interview with the appropriate minister. We were told it was unlikely that a minister would be available, and so it proved. But we were promised a statement by the end of last week. But as the drop-in meeting in Parliament drew to a close, still no statement. We did finally receive this, nearly 2 hours after the event ended.
We recognise primary eye care providers have the skills to deliver a great range of services, and NHS England's transformation programme is considering how digitally enabled image sharing could help more patients be cared for closer to home and relieve pressure on secondary care. Cutting waiting lists remains a key priority, and a combination of surgical hubs and the independent sector are being utilised to increase cataract surgery.
But still no reaction to the request for a national plan. And that's it for today. Your views welcome, of course, via email, intouch@bbc.co.uk, voice message 0161 836 1338, and our website is bbc.co.uk/intouch. From me, Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings, and studio manager Simon Highfield, goodbye.
Scaffolding and skips news for the week commencing the 18th of December. In the Newport area, Key House in Key Street, Pittis, 28 St James Street, 32 Chapel Street, 22 New Street, 48 A to F Scarrott's Lane, Empire Barbers, 63 Pyle Street, 7 High Street. Skips in the Newport area, 9 Milne Way and 69 St James Street.
The ride area is Union Nail Salon, 78 Union Street, Nationwide, 3 St Thomas's Square, Cross Street, 14 to 16 George Street, Overbank, Upper Green Road St Helens, 105 Monkton Street, 4C Spencer Road, 2 St Thomas Square, The Velvet Pig, 44 Union Street.
In the Cowes area, 19 Shore Road, Gurnard, and 11 Shooters Hill.
East Cowes area, the Barracks, Guardhouse, Albany Road, 2 to 4 Clarence Road.
In the Ventnor area, Cliff View, Hamborough Road, and 29 High Street, and 31 Allotment Road, Knighton.
Sandown area, we have Premier Inn, Esplanade.
And in the Shanklin area, 6 Cross Street and 73 Regent Street.
Yarmouth area, 1 The Square. Freshwater area, Blackbridge House, Blackbridge Road.